Hi, my name is Bradley Keefer, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Keen Decision Systems. And I want to welcome you all to our LinkedIn Live today of how AI is simplifying the marketing mix decisions. And we have some exciting news to share about where Keen is at, where our roadmap is headed, and really how we could utilize all of the excitement around AI to make better decisions from a marketing mix perspective. I'm joined today by our head of product, Josh Lucas. We're excited to really kind of like do this as the first introduction to Keen's vision. And really excited to share more about Keen, more about where we're headed as an organization, and our product vision overall. Because I always like to talk about from a perspective of like Keen likes to think of itself as more Apple against Microsoft. So we're always competing against someone who has features and benefits that catch up. And we're very much focused on like how do we just continue to disrupt the industry. And Keen started, for those who aren't familiar, about 15 years ago with this idea from our co-founder of like, how do we move beyond the 9 months to build a PowerPoint deck that has data that's too old, that's useless by the time I get it, and only looks backwards, into a real-time, always-on marketing mix. So Keen started that 15 years ago. So talk about ahead of its time. And we lived through the lull of marketing mix was all the rave, and then Josh can talk about a little bit about where the market went to, and now with marketing mixes back is like the cool new thing, and it's like we've been here the whole time and like making some pretty good headway in regards to how we disrupt that like consultant heavy like huge lift to still produce a backward looking forecast that or a backward looking ROI that at the end of the day is like our perspective is like who cares, right? Like unless you can connect that ROI historically to so what should I do about it, like how do we think about moving forward, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's just a bunch of hypothetical guesses. And that's where I'm excited to bring Josh into this conversation to tell us a little bit more from his perspective, where the industry's been and where we're headed. Because honestly, I think it's ripe for disruption again, like with the inclusion of AI into marketing mix modeling. So, Josh, thanks for coming in for it with us today.
Oh, thanks, Brad. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to solve this problem. I think I've spent my whole career on this problem from being in the early 2000s, bringing just last click attribution into the market and working with people who had nothing but I know how much I spent and I know how much I made. And that's when marketing mix really took off and before digital. But then with digital, people slowly got further and further away because you could have more real time attribution. This built on itself to becoming multi touch attribution. And this was all the rage, right? And then first party information started to go away. Cookies started to die, and we're left in a place in the what we're calling the roaring 20s where there are more channels than ever. It's never been easier for any website with traffic to set up their own media network for you to add and buy things on. So we have nearly limitless channels to advertise on, but very bad to non-existent attribution. Most of what we see today is moving on to last touch. And so we have all the ills that we had before of over accreditation to the last ad click in your series. And as Brad was saying, we see a big rise in the use of marketing mix. The Apple versus Microsoft, I would say, is the whole journey here is to get an ROI idea, right? That would be probably any of you listening here. Your ideal is I have 50 different channels. They're all telling me different things. I want one source of truth. We can obviously give you that. But what I'll tease later on is this is not what you want. You want to know what to do next, knowing what you have done before. And what I can tell you is even if you have the most perfect ROI attribution that is scientifically the most sound, it does not tell you that. So what Brad and I will go over today is how we can tell you that, how we can take these ROIs and make them into real profitable plans in your future without you having to do any of the analysis.
Yeah, we always talk about that on the commercial side, working with clients who are looking to disrupt around like, well, I've got all these attributions and I've got 17 agencies presenting all kinds of reports around reach and frequency and ROAS and all of that. So I have all this like I feel good within the marketing department, but then I have a conversation with my CFO who's like, hey, your budget's getting cut. We're cutting half your team. We're removing the CMO. So like it's this like marketing proof gap that's existed that is just getting worse, right? So by utilizing some of these like ROAS metrics, you're distracting yourself against what actually matters, which is how is marketing impacting revenue? And that's Keen's major differentiation because that's really what drives everything we do. Again, everybody that talks about ROIs are like, well, yeah, but we're talking about how we connect to revenue. And it's like, yeah, but you're not talking about how it connects to revenue from a profitability P&L perspective. And as Josh mentioned, like where Keen's vision really comes to life is, really in that chart that we were just showing is this idea of like, you've got all these decisions to make all over the place. We're distracted with inconsistent answers. So Keen's main objective is really to create a headless AI marketing decision making platform at the end of the day, where it's like, how do we utilize AI to connect to data through automation, to aggregate and map data through automation, to then load it into our platform to be able to then measure impact historically, but ultimately drive decisions in the future. And then how does our output of a buying plan actually then feed into these automated media buying platforms and DSPs? So at the end of the day, our vision and what drives us is how do we create this automated process, both from a product perspective and a data flow perspective. But it really comes back to this one word that we focus on, which is decisions. And AI is like perfect for making decisions and telling a story around the decisions you're trying to make. But as Josh will talk about as we go through this, AI sucks at doing math. Like when you talk about AI today, we always talk about Gen AI, right? Like we're riding the Chat GPT boom. So part of our secret sauce is our ability to actually like train the AI, system to do math in the form of interpretation. But even before we get into all the cool Gen AI stuff and riding that hype train, I really want us to focus on like AI's been core to who Keen's been since the beginning. And Josh, can you talk about that from Keen's beginning and how we've utilized machine learning, which was the first original form of AI?
Yeah, no, one of my favorite topics. So everything we're saying today is more state of the art and where the industry is going. If you're out there using ROIs right now to optimize, that's great. That's better than the 90s or the 80s where people were sticking their finger in the wind. But as you can see from this slide and from your own experience, there's so much data. There are thousands of rows across 50 some odd channels that you might be running, and it's too much for you to hold in your head to make a decision on that data, to unify your ROIs, to get a picture of who's telling me the truth, who's not. You must have a machine help you in that process. And that's when we talk about we've been doing this for 15 years. That is fundamentally where we began, was solving the data problem, how to unify everything. And we use machine learning techniques that look at all of your data and then create essentially a formula for your business. And this formula can we use to help in the planning and look at your ROIs retrospectively. So think of it as we can take, all you have to do is give us your data, and then we can create the Rosetta Stone for how everything works and how everything affects your top line sales and bottom line profits. And that is like really where I fell in love with Keen. Is I was a marketer in the world of last touch, and I always love reading those reports from Facebook telling me how I got 1,000% ROI. And it's like, this isn't taking into account my margin, the other things that are running. And so when I met John Busbus, one of our co-founders, and he told me, "Oh yeah, you just push a button." He had my interest, and I've been here ever since. And the way we do that is through a powerful statistical technology called Bayesian statistics, Bayesian MMM. But essentially, it allows you to take in all of this data, right? Take in any and all data you have come in, whether it's time series, whether it's just block campaigns. And then you're going to have your own analytics, right? Your own experience with, I've done these studies, or I have a good sense of this is about the range where we're performing with these tactics. You can bring that in as well. You can combine all of these third-party analytics with all of your data to create a robust formula that includes all your information, both data and your institutional knowledge, to create that formula, that Rosetta Stone, to then power all of your buying decisions. So, yes, you will get your historical analysis. You'll learn how much you made in 2023 and a unified perspective of everything. But what we're here to tell you today, that is not the important part of the formula. The important part of the formula is the maximization, right? So we can take that same we can take that same formula that we get from all of your information and then press go and say, you have your budget's the same year over year. Where do I place it? Your budget is shrinking 5%. Can I still hit my goal? We can answer all those questions and more with a technology that we've been working on and iterating for the past 15 years.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing right now is like everybody's talking about Gen AI on one side, and then everybody else is talking about, like Google's Magic Measurement Handbook, which for us we read it and it was like, yeah, man, welcome to the party. We've been doing this for 15 years. It's the same approach. We have the same concept, but there's a differentiation in there. Is that like where do you think Google ends, and where do you think they get it wrong in regards to it not being complete? And what comes to my mind is our elasticity engine, right? So how do we utilize our elasticity engine and the approach? Because it's not just like multiplicative, econometric, Bayesian, and measurement like they're talking about. There's also other layers in machine learning that we've incorporated utilizing our own priors, which requires less data from the end user or the brand to actually send. So, right now you find that small brands or like long tail brands are like, hey, I'm only spending 700K a year in marketing, and you have all these talking heads, other vendors that are like, hey, like you're not ready for marketing mix modeling. We disagree with that. And the reason we disagree with it is because they're saying it because their model doesn't work for brands that small. And they're not thinking about, well, what if that brand is spending 750K and trying to build the business case toward 1.5 to 2 million to 5 million? Like the reason that is, again, it goes back to that measurement mindset. So based off where the industry's at, what's your perspective on where Google gets it wrong and where Keen has a different perspective or Google has an incomplete perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I have a trust issue with anything that Google or Facebook says, right? They have an incentive, and their 99% of their revenue comes from one thing, advertising. Are they really going to put out a system that doesn't have their foot on their scale? That's an open question. But in the sense of our system, we have a patent pending technology that powers all of our baseline understandings of your performance. So, to Bradley's point, most marketing mix will say, I need 2 years of weekly data for us to even consider this tactic, because if they don't have that much data, they're going to see a lot of their conclusions go awry. Either you have 1 week, this is the most profitable thing ever, or it did nothing. The nuance with Keen and Bayesian is that we can take and we can level set, right? And from our institutional knowledge, we have a meta model of all our models. You can think of it. So as you're typing in TikTok, we are looking at how it's performed across our whole knowledge base, and affixing a intelligence along with your data to be processed together. So if you only have a little data, that's fine. Our marketing elasticity engine can provide that from other people's experience and right size it for your brand. So we're always trying to enhance that with your data to learn and learn. And I think that's point one on this, or point two on this slide. As you add more data, right, you're going to learn more and more. Your model and predictions are going to become tighter and tighter. But one of the big problems with marketing mix right now is that you do most ask you for this huge amount of data. And if you're trying to do something new, like Reddit advertising, or say you've never done TikTok and you're just getting on there now, you're not going to be able to include it in any of those efforts. Whereas here, we've got plenty of people using these things, and we can use their learnings to give you a good baseline in your model. So you can not only forecast, but execute that, knowing a right size range to expect in return. You get the return, update your model, and you get an even better look at what to expect in the next go around.
So you started talking about like the future there, and I'm intrigued by how we think about our probabilistic forecasting capabilities that come out of it. Because I think one thing that also falls short in traditional marketing mix is when they talk about running future simulations. What I actually find in the clients that we work with that have worked with traditional players or worked with other up and coming marketing mix is like their version of a future simulation is like I just take the end date and drag a straight line forward and make it 2% better. Like that's not probabilistic forecasting. That's not scenario planning, and that's not utilizing predictive AI based models. That's just like I could build that in an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm a sales guy, right? So how do we start to really incorporate future looking AI and then storytelling? Because at the end of the day, what it comes down to is like people understand machine learning. It's been around long enough. I wanted to talk through that a little bit, but let's get to that like sexier Gen AI stuff that everyone's really tuning in for those who have come in. Like they saw AI and what they thought was Chat GPT. So how do we not only incorporate the predictive analytics, but how do we incorporate Gen AI into that storytelling? So if you could talk
Yeah.
through from the perspective of predictive analytics and Gen AI, that'd be great.
Yeah, predictive analytics, going into why we don't say our bread and butter is ROI is because we do so much more than any human possibly could with those model results. Where our predictive engine looks across all tactics and all time periods and invest every dollar in your budget or every dollar needed to meet your goals one at a time and looks across all opportunities. So the math quickly becomes it's looking at billions of opportunities to invest and the relative puts and takes for each dollar. It's something none of us want to actually do, and it can do it in a matter of seconds. So, this gives us a prescriptive forecast of given your historical performance in your model. What should we be doing in the future, and down to a weekly level? So we will give you a prescription, and we'll see here in a minute, down to in Facebook, invest this much on this week, then that much on the next week. And you'll have a good probability of bringing about this much revenue, this much profit. But what we found over time is bridging that gap, right, from this sort of prescriptive, directive insight that is new to the market, where we're all used to thinking about ROI base and then just throwing our hands and throwing darts on what to do next based on this crude measurement. We found a great way to bridge that gap is by using large language models to help our users interact with their reports. So, and we'll go through this. Creating reports is so easy in our application. But a lot of times it's what am I looking at? What does it mean? And that's generally where you'll have a consultancy come in and increase the charges on you to explain what this means. But now in a generation of large language models, you can simply just click ask the AI, chat with it directly, and get a better sense of what it's really telling you. So we found it invaluable in storytelling to, as you're getting these results back, which are a different type of AI, you can have the part that's really good talking about the results, really serve up some of those insights. And so one of the things for those who are thinking about using large language models in marketing is it's a good storyteller, but it is garbage at math. It is the worst at math. It's worse than a 4-year-old at math, right? Because it's predicting words. It has no concept of math. And so really what we're doing at Keen is marrying two AI systems, one to process and derive insights from all of your data, take in all of your institutional knowledge, and then that gives us a set of predictions, forecasts, plans for you that we can then help you understand via machine learning and or via large language models. And that is how our roadmap is evolving over time. We'll check that out here as well in a couple minutes, where across the application, we are using large language models to help you better configure, better understand, and better work through your decisions. So it is the marriage of what AI is really good at math, Marrying that is what AI is really good at explaining and walking people through, and we do both throughout our application.
Yeah, and just to add some statistics, we did a pretty in-depth analysis of like can Gen AI, large language models do math, and it was like what 45 to 65% accurate on all the tests. Like that was the range of accuracy, which is obviously not reliable for the sake of us telling the client what this bar chart is telling you is that you should decrease your ROI or your ROIs decrease, and here's what you should do about it. So, if you could, while you're pulling up the application to kind of show people
Yeah.
what we're talking about here, a couple of things to think about as we transition here and really start to lean into the product features. Just a reminder that there is an ability for you to interact in the chat. So happy to answer any questions that you all have based off what you've heard so far. So go ahead and throw those in the chat. We're happy to address those. But the other thing I'd like to talk about is like we will be running this as a future series where we're actually going to walk through all the phases of our roadmap that are very much focused on how we're utilizing AI. What you're going to see here is like how we do data interpretation, storytelling, and how I can go from literally clicking two buttons to be able to go from here's the charts to here's the story to here's the slide deck. That thing your agencies and consultants are charging you like lots of money and billable hours to do. I can do it in 2 clicks. That's the power of AI. So how do I take a thousands of dollar process and turn it into 2 clicks? That's where AI can really start to improve the efficiency of your engagements, the efficiency of like, the cost of doing business. So all those non-working dollars that you're wasting on hours and paying people to put spreadsheets together can now be automated. This is the beginning of that vision of the headless AI enabled MarTech stack, right? This is that vision of how do we remove the amount of people. Now I know that's going to trigger some folks to say like, well, I don't want that because I need my job, right? But the reality is that we have to lean into the AI, right? We have to lean in because this is where we're going as an industry. So you're either going to learn or you're going to get removed because you chose not to learn, right? That's where we're at. So for the folks who are like, it'll never be that good, it'll never replace people, newsflash, it's coming. And for those folks who are like, but I'm going to resist this every step of the way, you're going to get kicked off the wagon, right? Because it's pulling out. It's going to pull out without you. So in the future, we'll talk through how we're going to use AI to do the whole process, really focusing here on like the report building. Because again, I think a good follow-up one is how we're going to utilize AI to solve that data mapping problem. Because usually when I talk about marketing mix, it is a PTSD trigger for everybody of like, oh gosh, not collecting the data, not tagging the data, not mapping the data. So we'll talk about that a little bit here at the end and set us up for the next one. But appreciate y'all jumping in here. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. But Josh, why don't you show us, how the AI is being used in the tool today?
Yeah, want to ground us, and you can have any amount of campaigns or tactics that you want, and then everything is grounded in your actual sales as a business, and we include your operating margin. We are always looking for bottom line profitability that separates us from the rest. So, however much data you have entered in here, frame it. More is always better, but if you only have a little, that doesn't really kill anything. And then we'll build a model. So in here, you have the ability to add any of that institutional research that you want. So say you already have studies on how radio online is performing, you can enter in those previous attributions right here and have those read in along with all your data in the model. But in the end, in only a couple clicks, you're going to get to this outlay of how everything's performing. So here you can see we've already done one of the hardest things in marketing mix. We've unified all of your ROIs to your bottom line business profit, right? So this alone, right, is a business and is what a lot of people are selling. But to us, this is really just one of the inputs because, okay, so what if I got 1.28 ROI on television? That doesn't really tell me what to do. It tells me if I invest 1.875 million in the same way with the same timing, I'll get probably this, but that doesn't give me room to breathe, right? I want to know about the other opportunities. And so our one of our crown jewels is our planning engine. And so what we enable you to do is say, take the same budget, right? In this case, they got a pretty nice budget for a future period, and then put in whatever tactic constraints you might have. Maybe you have pre-buys or um, limits on how much you can spend, and then you hit go, right? And this is the magic of the tool, is that it can show you within seconds that how you can invest the same amount of money, right? 68 million here, 68 million in 2023, and then turn that into even larger sums, right? And it does that by saying invest more in some places, invest less in others. Right here, we can see that television spot is really big. But this is sort of an analytical story, right? Josh, I thought you said that AI was just going to tell us everything. Yep, you're right. So if we come into reports, you'll see we have AI enabled on every panel that you can see, but we can also do something fun like tell me about the main drivers of the optimized plan's performance gains. And what we'll see is that it'll look at all of the charts it needs to answer this, give you individualized insights for each of these charts, and then build a executive summary slide. And then at the end of this, you'll be able to download your slides. Boop, off to your meeting. It took like 5 clicks. You didn't get charged anything. And we go down. Well, I guess you just do. Let me reload 1 second. Doo-doo-doo. Cool. All right. Well, there we go. There we go. You can see you have the executive summary here, and then in each of these, the optimized budget is going to increase your revenue by 33 million. And then, okay, how does it do it? Right? It'll increase. You need to make these increase in investment, radio, shopper marketing, OLV. Then you can clearly see, well, that's coming from television spot. That's factor one. What are my different investments I'm making? And then factor two is when am I making it, right? And so instead of just looking at the chart and figuring it out, we can tell you those high terms like reducing television in June and August, shifting funds towards trade, feature, and display in this instance in November and July, respectively. And then keep on going down the list. Every insight every panel is rich with insights. We can even go into advanced curves, which is really the innards of how the model is thinking. And you can see how, as you scale your investment, you'll get more and more diminishing returns, and really find that point of diminishing returns with your marketing budget. Here, you even have more room to run. So if you've ever wondered, if I had unlimited budget, where would I end up? We can show you that and tell whoever you need approval from the story at a click of a button. And that's really what we want to communicate. We are not focused on grading your past. That is an input, but that is not our focus. Our focus here is helping you plan for the best future and then explain that story. And that is really where our AI implementations are thriving again and again, is how do I invest this the best way? And then how do I communicate this internally and up the chain so I can make this change happen? And as you've seen here, it's just a couple of buttons either way. So very happy for y'all to be here and see this, and everything we're showing live in the app now. Nothing here is some weird AI demo. This is all available to you today.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, honestly, like the feedback that we've received from our clients is like, this is phenomenal. Like we're saving their team so much time. And the biggest challenge we have is trying to get marketers to understand data science and getting marketers to understand finance, right? So we're actually enabling our tool to allow marketers to speak in the language of finance. So we don't have to talk about, here's the reach and frequency, and here's the ROIs historically. We're adding that interpretation layer, and that's been the biggest feedback so far on the AI solution that we've launched in phase one. So as mentioned before, this is really just a preview of like the next couple LinkedIn lives that we're going to be running here. We're really going to be focusing in the future on AI factor framing. So like it's that whole like well, here are the 10 marketing channels that I have. Should I add three more? Like, and if I'm going to add three more, which one should they be? So it's that suggestion engine of based off everybody else, here's where they're spending and you're not. Like, based off trends we're seeing from the industry, you should consider these channels and here's how much you should spend through that, like, nemesis of, anybody who's been part of marketing mix and like the data collection part, which is like, oh, it's awful, right? How do I go find data from these agencies? And I changed agencies and my data's all over the place. It's unstructured. So how we're utilizing AI to solve that problem, to bring in the automation there. To the automated model QC. At the end of the day, we have a bunch of marketers buying our tool who are like, I don't even know what Bayesian regression is. I don't even know what a coefficient or a prior is. We've actually built an AI function inside of our tool that explains to you, your model's good, your model's overfit. Here's the channels you're missing. Here's what you're not thinking about that you should add. You're a ski resort and you think it's all related to weather. Well, it's related to weather, but what about these three factors? So again, it's a suggestive engine around, you made your model bad or you made your model good, or here's what's missing, or here's what you've added. So it's that scoring engine that we could utilize to fine tune a model. So you don't have to be a data scientist, to what you just saw, which is that AI reporting insight. All of this in pursuit of a 7-click experience is how Josh and I talk about it. Is like, we're getting to that point where we have enough AI insight coming out of our model where in 7 clicks, you'll be able to go from, I'd like to explore a marketing mix, to I put in some basic information and receive report insights. That's where Keen's headed. 7 clicks away from a marketing mix model, which is insane to even think about, when it's like, no, it's a 6-month journey and a 9-month, till I get the final report. We're automating a lot of these steps in the process. And again, we've got clients today, we're optimizing about $3.5 billion in tools. So again, for those of you who are like, I've never even heard of you guys, and you're talking about this dream state, this is already live. Like, it's already in process. We're already building it. And it's not like we're an untested solution. So happy to kind of talk through it with y'all as we continue on this journey. Our next LinkedIn live session will be on May 29th at 11:30 in the morning. So happy to kind of continue this conversation around this concept of factor framing and the data process. So appreciate y'all jumping in here to learn a little bit more about Keen, learn more about how we're utilizing Gen AI. And I look forward to y'all joining us in the future on May 29th. Thank you for your time.